Let's play a game. I'm holding right now a $100 bill that I give to you to make an investment. Based on whatever you choose to do next, you could double the money and receive a payoff of $200, or lose it all and go home with $0. On the screen, you can find information about 4 different cosmetic companies: the market value of the firm, the number of employees working for this firm, and the home country of the firm. Albrecht, for example, was founded by perfumer Lucas Albrecht and his chemist wife Lena. Lanua was founded by entrepreneurs Rashid and Noura Saleh. Yumi Shi launched her brand Yumi Cosmetics when she was just 16. And finally, Be Glorious was founded by Olivia Robinson, who is a fashion photographer. I give you now 15 seconds to think carefully and decide in which firm you would like to invest.
A question, are you missing a billion over there, or in Yumi Cosmetics, or it's just $45? I'm confused.
It's not millions. Okay. How many of you have decided to invest in Albrecht? Okay, how many of you have decided to invest in Lanua? How many of you have decided to invest in Yumi Cosmetics? And lastly, how many of you have decided to invest in Be Glorious? Okay, thank you. So have you just experienced the decision whether to invest involves risk assessment? The question is, what helped you make the decision? What helped you decide which firm is worth the risk? Is it the market value of the firm? Or maybe the region of the firm played a significant role with you not even noticing it? I'm trying to figure out which factors are at stake when investors interact financially with foreigners. Specifically, are they even willing to do business with foreigners? And if so, do they prefer a certain group of foreigners rather than others? By the way, this simulation that you just did is similar to an experiment I'm about to conduct on almost 700 Americans using real money. My theoretical reasoning is based on this growing and young field called cultural finance, which tries to explain financial outcomes with cultural factors. Any financial transaction is based on promises about the future, often paper promises backed by nothing than words. Therefore, the financial market is highly dependent on trust. The question is, who can we trust? What allows to form enough trust between investors to make financial transactions even possible? Market participants are often total strangers and know nothing about each other beside the information they choose to provide. Therefore, people use mental shortcuts in order to reduce the uncertain nature of the market. We as humans tend to categorize others into groups. And in order for us to do so, we try to collect some clues about others that imply to which group they belong. Such clues can be their skin color, their traditional costumes, and even the way they greet each other. After collecting this information and categorizing others into groups, we tend to favor those who share our norms and values. This is called in-group favoritism. Why? Since we expect our group members to treat us fairly. Therefore, my first hypothesis suggests that as the cultural distance between individuals or states increases, they are less likely to interact financially with each other. But how do I measure cultural distance? I measure cultural identity factors such as cultural distance based on 3 proxies of culture. Specifically, what are the chances that 2 people picked at random belong to the same ethnic, religious, and linguistic group? Now, I want you to imagine a Korean person walking in the street of Seoul. Everywhere this person goes, he sees people that look and behave the same as this person does. Now I want you to think about a New Yorker who walks in the street of New York and sees Chinese billboards, Russian bookstores, Lebanese falafel stand, and an Indian performer everywhere. Who is more likely to trust out-group members, or in other words, foreigners? The New Yorker or the person who walks in the streets of Seoul? This leads me to my second hypothesis. I propose that people living in more homogeneous, culturally more homogeneous countries are less likely to trust others, foreigners, and also to interact with them financially. If what I say is true, we would expect to see that in countries that have higher levels of cultural heterogeneity level, they also tend to trust foreigners more. Therefore, I collected information about countries' cultural heterogeneity level and their trust in foreigners. As you can see, when the level of heterogeneity goes up, also their trust in foreigners. For example, Canada and New Zealand show high level of cultural heterogeneity and also high levels of trust in foreigners. In contrast, Tunisia and Armenia show low levels of cultural heterogeneity, meaning they are more homogeneous, and therefore the trust in foreigners is lower. While explaining how culture biases individuals' financial decision-making is important and interesting, as a political scientist, I'm also interested in how this behavior is translated into policymaking. One assumption that I have is that the micro can explain the macro, and the other way around. Countries are not actors in their own right, but act through people who belong to specific cultures. It follows that their government comprises of governing elites who decide whether to liberalize financially. Financial liberalization is the process of deregulating a financial sector, allowing capital to flow freely into and out of the country. Hence, if policymakers belong to the same cultural environment as their people, and culture biases individuals' financial decision-making, I also assume that it will affect policymakers. It could also be that the policies promoted by those representatives shape the way people think and act financially. To test my hypothesis, I'm working in two directions, micro and macro. At the micro level of analysis, I'm using an experimental design when I give people real money to invest in firms, while manipulating the cultural origin of the firm, similar to the simulation we just did. At the macro level of analysis, I'm using aggregate panel data of 181 countries between the 1970 and 2018. I have found evidence that culture indeed affects countries' financial decision-making, meaning their financial liberalization policies. To summarize, in the financial market, we deal with misinformation about others' integrity and honesty. That makes us more suspicious towards them. But we still want to make business with strangers, so we tend to categorize them into groups. However, we tend also to trust and favor those with whom we share norms and values. What are the consequences of in-group favoritism, you may ask? In the broader sense, policymakers may fail to allow certain groups of foreigners to interact financially with the locals. This means that our financial choice with whom we want to interact is not free. In the narrow sense, investors may miss out business opportunities and choose to do business with a specific group of people, not because they are better partners, but simply because they cannot put their trust in others. Not less important, the way culture biases our financial decision is not only relevant to the stock market. Culture also biases our choice of whom we want our taxi driver to be, the teacher's children, and even our employees. Those are all financial decisions. Thank you. I can go.
Hi, thank you so much. Very interesting.
Thank you.
In lab equipment, there are big players that mask the origin. Is it a problem for you in your experiment?
No, this is what I want to check, right? So this is exactly what I give, the information I want to give to participants. But I do not do it explicitly. I do want them to understand the origin of the film implicitly. So I will not say, okay, this film is coming from Saudi Arabia or something like that. I will give something like the simulation we just did. I give some names of the entrepreneurs they founded, and I'm trying to do it implicitly. But yes, this is exactly what I want to see. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Omer from anthropology at Hebrew University.
Hi.
Thank you very much. It's a really timely topic, and it was very interesting. I wanted two things I want to ask you about. The first thing is it necessarily wrong to have a cultural bias? For example, there are some advantages. Like, I can trust someone that I know, we can have a better communication. Is it always wrong? I mean, because the assumption was that people have cultural biases because they assume they will be treated fairly or something like that. Is it a bad thing, or there are more advantages to that? And the second thing, can we think of different ways of understanding culture in global communication in businesses? For example, you gave, I don't know, like one company that comes from the biotech field. So if I'm a biotech investor, maybe I prefer a biotech company about, I don't know, company that comes from my own country but comes from fashion, for example. Thank you.
Thank you also for your questions. I will need you to repeat the second one, but just I will answer the first one first. So, is it a bad thing? I'm not sure it's a bad thing in any case, but as I tried to say in the last slide that I showed you, sometimes we miss out on opportunities because we cannot trust several people. And it doesn't mean that this person, just because he or she wears our traditional costumes and can say, okay, this one is from my group, I would do business with them, but not necessarily this firm is worth me to invest in this firm. And just because I cannot trust, I don't know, Arabs, I will not invest in them, although this opportunity is much better for me as an investor. In a broader sense, it will also cause us just to be more suspicious toward foreigners in general. And when we think about democratic countries and the way we want to engage with each other, we do want to trust each other and to cooperate. And this is essential a component of capitalism, I guess, and democratic regimes. So if we do not want to be in these kinds of regimes, so maybe not, but it depends. And the second one
I'll do it quickly. I mean,
yeah.
We define ourselves by different realms of, let's say, belonging. So
yeah.
I can be either Israeli, but also anthropologist. So maybe I will trust anthropologist better than I will trust an Israeli person, for example.
It could be, and this is actually a good question, and I do want to control this in my experiment. So I will also check self-report, what is your occupation, and I would want to see if there is an effect for that, but I cannot say because I didn't do the experiment yet. So, but it's a good question that I thought about. So, thank you.
Hi, so I'm Alona in law from Tel Aviv University, and I don't trust lawyers. Now, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting, and any research on openness and trust is extremely timely. So I have a sort of cliche question about causality versus correlation, because you said that cultural bias, you show that it influenced policy making, and I wondered whether there's more complex relations between the two. For instance, thinking that open societies that are willing to incorporate foreigners into them would promote more heterogeneity in the society itself. So it seems that the direction of the relationship might be more complex.
Yeah, so you mean there is a possibility of reverse causality between X and Y.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm actually in the first paper that I am. Now it's in the review. I'm using IV to SLS estimation in order to deal with reverse causality. I don't know if you're familiar with these techniques, but I'm using genetic and pathogenic factors as my instrument for variables to reduce this potential problem. If you would like me to tell you all about it, or you want to read my paper, I would happy to send it to you. But yes, you're right. It's a concern.
Hi, my name is Ambreen from sociology at the Hebrew University, and you had a very interesting presentation. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about the role of gender in your data set, how it features, if at all.
Besides asking what is your gender in the survey that I'm going to, to give participants, I'm not going to go into that deeply. But I will control the gender effect because we do know that females generally do not like to invest because they are risk averse and, but besides controlling the gender, I'm not going into that at all because I'm not an expert about gender factors, but I would
never say never, because if your results show a massive difference between
probably I
women
will.
and men, then you can go into that as well.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Maybe an hypothesis can be that women trust foreigners more than males. I don't know why I think that way, but yeah. But the experiment, I'm not going to use these kinds of people. I'm just using lay people, so I do not know. But
well, as long as you control for it, you open a door to use the data at a later stage.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions?
No more?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. No. Hi.
First of all, thank you. It was very
the
interesting.
Best one. Yeah.
It was. And it also relates a lot to my research, so I'm intrigued. I wanted to ask a general question about the condition of distrust. Just asking. I don't know, you might give us a bit more knowledge about it from your field. But so I know that a democratic country, I mean, the democratic regime might be, or it frustrates when the democratic society is in a distrust condition. And I wonder, what does the literature say, or what you know to say about whether, I mean, if we are a democratic country in a distrustful condition, what might happen to our economic growth in the future as general? I mean, can I say, or there is research of the fact that distrust might frustrate economic growth eventually? Yeah. And then I'm asking, I mean, people wouldn't like to stop the economic growth. I mean, we want to continue progressing, of course. So, I mean, just interesting. I would like to hear your opinion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are a lot of studies that show that societies with lower trust inside, okay, also not just with foreigners. I'm looking about trust in foreigners, but many studies just focus on how we trust each other in a specific society, and they call it social capital. And if social capital is very low, meaning we cannot cooperate with each other, we will see that the economy is not really growing, such as Italy, for example, compared to Germany. We see that the economy is not really good because the South and the North cannot cooperate with each other as much as, the whole Germany. And so we see a lot of studies like that. So we also see that when we look at the trend in a specific country, when we see high levels of trust and when it goes down, we see that the economy, the GDP goes down also. There are some problems with causality in those studies, so I cannot say for sure that it leads to, but it looks like it does. So yeah.
Thank you. One sec. Is there any other questions on the other side of the room? Okay. Last question.
Those are the physics and stuff.
Last question.
Thank you very much. It's of course very interesting. I was wondering if there is any if you can tell about specific sectors in the economy which you can show or see how different cultures are more heterogenic than the other specific economic sectors?
Yeah, so I cannot tell you that because I'm not really looking at different sectors, and I specifically chose cosmetic companies because no one really cares about cosmetic companies in a political sense. I didn't want to take a technological companies or You know, because of COVID-19 and all this, I wanted to isolate the effect of culture and how it biases financial decision making. So I took just something that is something that no one really cares too much about where it comes from. We just want our lipsticks. So this is why, and I do not look at different sectors. So I cannot answer you that, but maybe I can send you one article. Again, they do not do any good research, research with the causality problem, but it can say something, I guess. Sorry for not providing the answer. I just don't know.
Thank you, Gal. Thank you very much.